The light never reaches the basement. In downtown Salt Lake City, beneath a granite mountain, there are vaults. Miles of tunnels carved into solid rock. The temperature never changes. 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity controlled to the decimal. And inside these vaults, stored on microfilm and hard drives behind 14-ton doors designed to survive a nuclear blast, are records, billions of them, birth certificates, death records, marriage licenses, the names of people who lived and died long before you were born. Your ancestors, my ancestors, all of them cataloged, indexed, waiting. But waiting for what? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints didn't build the largest genealogical archive in human history out of curiosity. They built it for a ritual most of the world doesn't even know exists. A ritual where the living perform ceremonies for the dead, where teenagers in white jumpsuits step into water and are baptized hundreds of times in a single day, each time taking on the name of someone who died decades or centuries ago, someone who never asked for this, someone whose family might never know it happened. Why? What are they preparing for? And why has this been kept quiet for almost 200 years? Let me tell you a story. 1820, Upstate New York. A place they called the Burned-Over District, because so many religious revivals had swept through it, each one promising salvation, each one leaving people more confused than before. In this chaos, a 14-year-old farm boy named Joseph Smith walked into a grove of trees. He said he was confused about which church to join. He knelt and prayed. And according to him, the heavens opened. A pillar of light descended. God the Father and Jesus Christ appeared before him. Two separate beings, both with bodies of flesh and bone. And they told him something that would change everything. Every church on earth had fallen into apostasy. The truth had been lost. And he, this teenager, had been chosen to restore it. No witnesses, no evidence, just his word. But here's the thing. People believed him. Not just a few, thousands. And within a decade, he'd published a book he claimed was translated from ancient golden plates, written in a language no scholar had ever seen, Reformed Egyptian, using a seer stone he placed in the bottom of a hat, covering his face to block out the light while words appeared in the darkness. Does that sound like divine revelation to you? Or does it sound like something else? By 1830, the Book of Mormon was printed. 5,000 copies. It told the story of ancient Israelites who sailed to the Americas 600 years before Christ, split into two nations, the Nephites and the Lamanites, and built great civilizations before destroying each other in a final apocalyptic war. Jesus Christ, after his resurrection, appeared to these people, preached to them, established his church among them, and the last survivor, a prophet named Moroni, buried the golden plates on a hill in New York where they waited 1,400 years until Joseph Smith dug them up. Archaeologists have never found evidence of these civilizations. Linguists have never found Reformed Egyptian. DNA studies show Native Americans descended from Asia, not the Middle East. But none of that mattered. Joseph Smith had created something more powerful than evidence. He'd created certainty. And certainty, in a world full of doubt, is irresistible. But Smith didn't stop there. He started receiving more revelations. And these revelations became stranger. In 1831, he announced that Independence, Missouri was the original site of the Garden of Eden. That's right. Adam and Eve walked in Missouri. He said Jesus would return there to establish his kingdom. He began gathering followers to build a holy city, but locals drove them out. They moved to Kirtland, Ohio, then back to Missouri, then to Nauvoo, Illinois. Each time, persecution followed. Each time, the reasons were the same. The Mormons voted as a bloc, answered only to Smith, and practiced doctrines that terrified outsiders, like plural marriage. In 1843, Smith received a revelation that still exists in their scriptures today, Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, commanding him to take multiple wives. He told his first wife, Emma, that if she didn't accept it, she would be destroyed. He married at least 30 women, some as young as 14, some already married to other men. He told them it was God's will. He told them it was required for exaltation, the highest degree of heaven, and when word got out, it nearly destroyed him. By 1844, Nauvoo had become the second largest city in Illinois, 12,000 residents, its own charter, its own militia with Joseph Smith as lieutenant general. He declared himself a candidate for president of the United States. He ordered the destruction of a newspaper that exposed his polygamy, and then the government came for him. He was arrested and jailed in Carthage, Illinois. On June 27, 1844, a mob stormed the jail. Joseph Smith fired 3 shots from a smuggled pistol before they killed him. He died at 38. Most religions would have ended right there. But his didn't, because he'd built something that could survive without him. A system of temples, priesthoods, and secrets that bound people together tighter than any prophet ever could. Brigham Young took over. He led thousands of followers across the wilderness in one of the largest migrations in American history. They walked 1,300 miles, pulling handcarts, burying their dead along the trail until they reached the Salt Lake Valley. "This is the place," Young said, and they built Zion. Within 3 years, they'd constructed the foundations of a temple, not a church, a temple. Because in Mormonism there's a difference. Churches are for Sunday worship. Temples are for something else entirely, something you can't talk about, something that happens behind locked doors with no windows, no cameras, no outsiders allowed. Ever. Here's what I need you to understand. You don't just walk into a Mormon temple. First, you must be a baptized member for at least a year. Then you must live the word of wisdom. No alcohol, tobacco, coffee, or tea. You must pay a full tithe, 10% of your income, verified in an annual interview. You must obey the law of chastity, no sexual relations outside heterosexual marriage. And you must sustain the church leadership as prophets, seers, and revelators. Only then, after interviews with your local bishop and stake president, are you given a recommend, a small card that grants you access. But access to what? The moment you step inside, you remove your street clothes and put on white. Everything white. Then you're led into a small room where, if it's your first time, you participate in an initiatory ceremony. You used to be naked under a poncho while someone touched different parts of your body, anointing you and pronouncing blessings. That was changed in 2005. Now you're fully clothed, but the intention remains the same. You're being washed, anointed, prepared to become a king and queen, a priest and priestess unto God. And then you're given the garment. 2 pieces white, covering your torso and extending to your knees, marked with 4 symbols stitched over the right breast, the left breast, the navel, and the knee. You're told these represent the square, the compass, and the covenants you're about to make. You're instructed to wear them day and night for the rest of your life. They're not magical, the church says, but members have testified they've been protected by them. Burns that stopped at the garment line. Car accidents where they walked away unharmed while others didn't. Faith, or something programmed into them so deeply they can't see the manipulation. Next comes the endowment. You enter a room designed like a small theater. The lights dim. A film begins. You watch the creation. You watch Adam and Eve in the garden. You watch them fall, and you watch Lucifer, played by an actor, tempt them, argue with them, mock them. Then you're told to stand. You raise your right arm to the square and make covenants. You covenant to obey the law of sacrifice, to sacrifice everything you have for the church. You covenant to obey the law of the gospel. You covenant to sustain the leadership. And then comes the one that changes everything. You covenant to consecrate all your time, talents, and possessions to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Not to God, to the institution. You promise never to speak evil of the Lord's anointed, and you're taught the tokens. Handshakes, specific grips with names. The first token of the Aaronic priesthood, thumb extended, press firmly. The second token of the Melchizedek priesthood, fingers interlocked, the sure sign of the nail. Each one has a name, each one has a meaning, and you're told that when you die, angels will stop you at the veil and ask for these tokens. If you don't know them, you cannot pass. Heaven has a password, and only Mormons know it. Let that sink in for a moment. Salvation isn't about grace, it's about memorizing handshakes. But we're not done. After the endowment, there's sealing. This is temple marriage. It's performed in a room with walls covered in mirrors facing each other, creating an infinite reflection, symbolizing eternity. You kneel across an altar from your spouse. A church leader, called a sealer, binds you together. Not until death do you part, but for time and all eternity. Your children, if born under this covenant, are born in the covenant, automatically sealed to you. If you married before joining the church, you can have your children sealed to you later. But here's the trap. If you leave the church, that sealing can be revoked. Your family, the people you love most, will be ripped from you in the afterlife. They'll go to the celestial kingdom. You won't. Forever separated. This isn't just doctrine. This is emotional hostage-taking. And then there are the dead. In the basement of every temple is a baptismal font resting on the backs of 12 oxen. Members bring the names of ancestors, people who died without hearing the gospel, and perform their baptisms by proxy. A teenager stands in the water. A name is read. Brother Smith, having authority given me of Jesus Christ, I baptize you for and in behalf of John Doe, who is dead. The teenager is dunked. They come up, another name, another baptism. In one session, a person can be baptized 50, 100 times. The church has performed over 500 million of these ordinances. They've baptized Anne Frank. They've baptized Holocaust victims. They've baptized Gandhi. And after public outrage, they promised to stop baptizing Jewish Holocaust victims without family permission. But the practice continues for everyone else. Your great-great-grandmother, already baptized. Your atheist uncle who died last year? Give it time. Why does the church do this? They teach that everyone deserves the chance to accept the gospel, even after death. In the spirit world, missionaries preach to the dead, and if they accept, the earthly ordinances must be performed. Baptism, endowment, sealing, all by proxy. It sounds compassionate, but think about what it really means. The church is rewriting history. They're claiming souls. They're building a database of every human who ever lived, so that when Christ returns, they can say, "We saved them. They belong to us." This is why they've spent billions on genealogy. Family Search. Org, the church's free website, is the largest genealogical resource in the world. Why is it free? Because every name you upload, every record you find, feeds the machine. Those vaults under the mountain? They're not just storage, they're preparation. The church believes that during the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, they'll have time to complete temple work for everyone who ever lived. Billions of ordinances, and they're getting ready. Now let's talk about what happens when you start asking questions. The church has a term for people who leave, apostates. And apostates, according to doctrine, are worse than those who never believed. They've tasted the truth and rejected it. They've been deceived by Satan. Current members are warned not to associate with them. Families are told that if they stay close to apostates, their own salvation is at risk. I've read letters from parents disowning children, spouses filing for divorce, siblings refusing to speak. Why? Because the person doubted. Because they asked why the church keeps $100 billion in investments while members skip meals to pay tithing. Because they found out Joseph Smith used the same seer stone to hunt for buried treasure before he claimed to translate golden plates. Because they learned the Book of Abraham, another scripture Joseph Smith translated from Egyptian papyri, was proven false when Egyptologists examined the papyri and found they were common funerary texts having nothing to do with Abraham. The church's response? The papyri were just a catalyst. The real translation came by revelation. In other words, don't trust evidence, trust us. And people do, because leaving costs everything: your community, your identity, your eternal family. The church has built a system where the fear of losing everything keeps people obedient, even when they stop believing. There's a name for this: undue influence. Some call it coercive control, but the church calls it faith. Here's what no one tells you. The current prophet, The man Mormons believe speaks directly to God receives a salary. So do the apostles. The church calls it a modest living allowance, but leaked documents show it's at least $120,000 a year, plus benefits, housing, travel, and expenses. Meanwhile, local leaders, bishops, and stake presidents who do most of the work serve for free. The people at the top are paid. Everyone else sacrifices. So I'll ask you again, what are they hiding? Why do temple ceremonies require blood oaths of secrecy? Why are members disciplined for recording or discussing them? Why does the church fight so hard to keep its finances private? Why did they spend millions lobbying against same-sex marriage while claiming to love everyone? Why do LGBTQ youth in Mormon families attempt suicide at rates 3 times higher than their peers? Why are women not allowed to hold the priesthood, perform baptisms, or officiate in temples? Why, if this is the true church restored by Jesus Christ himself, does it look so much like every other institution designed to concentrate power and wealth at the top? I don't know what you believe. Maybe you're Mormon and you're angry right now. Maybe you're questioning. Maybe you left years ago and this brought it all back. But here's what I do know. Truth doesn't require secrecy. Love doesn't require control. And God, if God exists, doesn't need handshakes. The temples are still there. The vaults are still full. And somewhere tonight, a teenager will stand in water and be baptized in the name of someone who died 100 years ago. Someone who never asked for it, and no one outside those walls will ever know. That's not faith, that's something else. And maybe it's time we started calling it what it is.